with Ashleydawn, and I want to talk to you about healthy boundaries. And it could be healthy boundaries in dating, it could be healthy boundaries in a relationship, maybe a family relationship, maybe a work relationship, maybe a friendship. And that's what I kind of mean by relationship. You do have relationships with people based on, you know, how often you see them, what you do with them. But boundaries are such an important thing, okay? I want you to think about, ooh, why is my check engine light on? That is not good. I want you to think about, well, actually, that's great that it's on, because a check engine light tells us to check our engine. Sometimes a boundary or somebody overstepping our boundaries tells us that we need to check our heart engines, that we need to see what our heart engine is saying. Maybe our heart engine is saying, hey, that person's taking advantage of you. Hey, that person, you know, doesn't have the best intentions for you, right? And so we got to check our engines. I'm going to have to check my engine. I hope nothing's wrong. I pray and I hope nothing is wrong, because I do not have money to fix nothing. But I know God is my provider, Jehovah Jireh, and He will provide like He always does. But boundaries. Okay, so you have a fence and you have an animal. Now, if you let your animal out of your yard, you want that fence to protect your animal from cars that may hit it if it gets out in the road, right? A fence is a boundary for your animal not to go past. Okay, so if you have a dog, you let your dog outside, you got a fence, the dog stays in the fence, it doesn't get hit by a car. Well, what happens if you don't have a fence and you just let your dog out and you don't put it on a leash and you're not walking with it? Well, it could run out in the street and it could be chasing a squirrel and it could get hit. And that dog would not be safe. So the boundary, the fence, is there for the dog's safety, for the dog's protection. A boundary line in your life is there for your protection. It's there for your mental protection, your spiritual protection, your physical, emotional, etc. protection. Well, if you don't have it in place, then you could get hurt. You could. So I have several books. I have Boundaries, and I think it's by Henry Cloud or Henry Townsend. I do believe it's Henry, though. So you have a boundary book, you have boundaries in dating, you have boundaries in relationships, you have boundaries in marriage, you have boundaries for kids. Like, they did a spinoff of like a million different boundary books based on the one boundary book. And so it is raining. These people are driving super slow. But you have boundaries. A boundary is a protection line. It's something like, okay, I'm driving down the road and there is a line in the middle of the street that separates the left side of the street from the right side of the street, so that two different people can be on the same street and be driving and not wreck. That line in the middle is there for both of our protection. It's a boundary, and I'm not supposed to cross it and the other person's not supposed to cross it unless we give each other room and we tell each other we're getting ready to cross it. That's where communication comes in. When you communicate with somebody and you let them know, hey, this is my boundary. This is as far as I want you to go. Maybe you have a boundary and, you know, you don't want your family prying into your marriage. And so you say, you know what, Mom, Dad, I love you, but I'm going to put a boundary in this area because my marriage is important to me and you're overstepping your boundary. I don't need your advice in our marriage. We're going to try to work this out with us and our counselor and God. And so this is my boundary line. I don't need you prying into our relationship anymore. Okay, so that's an example. Maybe it's a boss that you have meshed your personal life with your work life, and so your boss knows way more about you than they maybe should know, or you know more about them, and maybe it's really hard to be professional and business oriented when you kind of go over that boundary line. You got to let them know, like, hey, when I'm at work, we're only going to talk about work stuff, and when we're out and we're friends, we're only going to talk about friend stuff. I don't want to talk about work when we're out, you know, on a girls' night, and I don't want to talk about a girls' night when we're at work. I want to keep it professional, right? That's a boundary. Boundaries are so important in protecting your mental health, especially your mental health. I mean, it's your physical health too, but your mental health is really important, because from your mental health, everything else, my mascara is touching my eye with the shadow. Everything else touches it. like everything else in your life is going to come into if your mind is not right, if you cannot think straight, if your thoughts are not positive, forget it. Everything else is going to be jacked up too. So you really need to pay attention to your mental health. And if somebody is abusing you, if they're putting you down, if they're maybe calling you names, if maybe they're not meeting you halfway in your relationship, and maybe you're doing, you're going 90 and they're going 10, and you're just constantly doing stuff and constantly calling them and constantly reaching out to them, and you're just getting really nothing in return. Like, you're really not getting anything in return. Maybe you need to put a boundary and say, you know what? I've realized that I do too much in this relationship or this friendship. I'm not going to do as much. I'm not going to call as much. I'm not going to text as much. I'm not going to clear my schedule for you as much, because I really shouldn't. It's not in my best interest. It's not in my mental health's interest. Watermelon water. It's not sponsored, but it should be, because it's my favorite and I drink it every single day. I love watermelon. And it's really, really healthy for you. It's good for your muscles if you're working out and you're recovering. I am just getting over being sick, and so trying to build my immune system back, trying to build my health back. And since we're at a stoplight, I can read it to you. So it's got 320 milligrams of electrolytes, 380 milligrams of L-citrulline, and 10 milligrams of lycopene. It's got 6 times more potassium than your favorite sports drink. It's got vitamin C, magnesium, potassium, calcium, protein. Does have 18 grams of sugar, so there is some sugar, but it's really good. I like it a lot. But back to boundaries, right? A boundary in this drink is this cap. If I pour this cup out, it's going to go everywhere. But if I keep the cap on it, it's not. It's a boundary. Boundaries are healthy. They're necessary. And I highly, highly encourage you to have them. Because if you don't have boundaries, you are going to find that you are overwhelmed. You're exhausted. You're probably going to be burnt out, because you're probably going to be running around trying to make everybody else happy and not realizing that at the end of the day that you're not happy. That's a problem. I have just gone above and beyond for people, and then realized at the end of the day, like, I didn't have healthy boundaries. I didn't have healthy boundaries. I should have done this more. I should have done this less. Boundaries are just so important. And, I could go into all the little details about them, but I just would rather you read the book and make your own boundaries, because I don't want to tell you, okay, make this boundary, do this thing, and then you do it, and then it, maybe doesn't work out for you, and then you blame me. And you're like, well, Ashleydawn told me to do this, and I believed her, and it. No. Read the book, figure out what boundaries mean to you, what boundaries are for you, and then use the book to help make healthy boundaries in your life, and to put them into practice and into play, so that you don't do things that are going to hurt you, and so that you don't let other people do things that are going to hurt you either. Boundaries are there to protect you, and if they're not protecting you, then maybe you have the wrong boundaries. But I highly encourage you to read the book. It helped me a lot. Some boundaries that I have made, I'll just tell you, I'm not telling you to do this for yourself, but I'll just share. I turn my phone off. Sometimes I just turn my phone off, because here's the deal. Somebody shouldn't be able to reach you 24/7. They shouldn't be able to, call you 24/7 and have you answer and have you kind of in their pocket. Back in the day when people were the happiest, and when mental illness was a lot lower than it is now, and anxiety was a lot lower than it is now, people went about their lives and they went about their days without being interrupted by other people. They didn't have pagers. They didn't have cell phones. They didn't have, all these things that were tying them to other people. They lived their own life, and then at the end of the day, when they got home, they'd check their answering machine, and if they wanted to call somebody, they'd call them back. If they didn't want to, they wouldn't. Or, there was call waiting, and so if you wanted to get off the line with who you were with, you could. If you didn't, you didn't have to. But I just feel like cell phones really overstep boundaries, because you can be in the middle of an intimate moment with your husband and somebody can call. And I have heard of friends, of people that I've counseled, stop being intimate with their husband to answer a phone call. Or stop being present with their children playing a game or at a softball game and answer a phone call or text somebody or check on their Instagram and their Facebook. And that's another thing. We are so consumed with other people's life and like knowing what other people are doing at all times. Like, oh, this person checked into this place, this person checked into this place, oh, this person's doing this person's doing this. Like, we should not be that involved in other people's lives. We are overstepping our boundary. Yes, Facebook is awesome. I love Facebook. Yes, Instagram's awesome. I love Instagram. I love TikTok. I love all those social medias and they're great. But when we are so connected to other people's life, and sometimes it's not even our friends, sometimes it's celebrities, and we're seeing where they're checking in at, and we're seeing what they're doing, and we're seeing all these different things. And sometimes we're so into their life that we forget to live our own. I have been places, watching friends' kids play sports, and I'm talking about me because I'm a professional in my own life, and I've been on my phone like, oh yeah, and I've missed something that I should have seen. And then at the end of the concert or the performance or whatever, I see my friend's child, and I'm like, oh, you did so great, and they're like, did you see that thing? And I'm like, no. And they're like, oh, I missed that thing that was so important to somebody in my life because I was on my little phone. How many times can we say the same thing? Or maybe somebody was talking to us and we were all in our phone and we weren't listening to them. Maybe somebody, really needed us to be there, and we normally would notice that they were hurting, but because we were so into our phone, we don't notice. And I've been guilty of this too, and I try to be better about it, but when we're on the phone, when we go to a restaurant or we go to like a grocery store and we ignore the person that's serving us because we're on our phone, we're like, oh yeah, yeah, or we do it on purpose and we get on our phone so we won't have to talk to people. We're missing out on our life because of our phone, because we're allowing a boundary line to be erased. You need to put a boundary line to where your life begins and somebody else's begins. Your life and somebody else's shouldn't be like this unless it's God or your husband and your family, obviously. But even that, you need to have boundary lines in your own personal life. You need to have your personal life. Your husband needs to have his personal life. Your kids need to have their personal life. And then you have a life together as a family. But it should never be an over-enmeshed relationship to where I say whatever I want and I don't think about your feelings and you just let that fly. No, when somebody's hurting you consistently, you need to let them know, draw a boundary line, say, listen, I don't appreciate you hurting me. I don't appreciate you talking to me in this way. And if you continue hurting me, if you continue talking to me in this way, I'm going to have to stop talking to you. I'm going to have to put a boundary, and I'm going to have to take myself out of your life. I've taken myself out of a lot of people's lives because they didn't treat me right, because they mistreated me. Maybe it was an ex-boyfriend that just took advantage of me in that, I'm a nice person and I'm giving and I'm thoughtful and I'm loving and I always, try to go above and beyond and do things for people. And sometimes that can get taken advantage of. People don't appreciate it and they don't reciprocate it. What does reciprocate it mean? They don't do it back. So if I come over to your house and I bring dinner all the time, or I cook you dinner all the time, or I come over and clean your house or wash your truck, or, do sweet little loving things for you, or bring you little gifts, or, let you know how much I care about you, or give you massages, and you never give me a massage. You never wash my car. You never bring me anything. You never cook me dinner. You never bring me dinner. You never, if you're not doing the things that I'm doing for you, then it's not fair. It's not fair. And if that's the way that it is, well, then I maybe need to draw a boundary line and say, you know what, this is a one-sided relationship and it's not healthy. It's not healthy for me because I'm being taken advantage of, and it's not healthy for you because you're taking advantage of somebody. So you do have to put those boundary lines in. Maybe it's, a parent that, puts you down for the way that you look. Well, maybe you need to take yourself out of that relationship and just let them know, like, listen, if you're going to put me down and you're going to put the way I look down, then I'm not going to come around you anymore because I don't like being verbally abused. I don't like being manipulated. I don't like you doing or saying things that are hurtful to me. Like, I don't like that. I don't appreciate that. You have to communicate and tell people how you're feeling. You can't, just assume that they're going to know, because people aren't mind readers. But you do need to put some healthy boundaries in place to let them know, like, hey, this is my fence, and you're not going to come outside my fence. You're not going to come into my fence. I love Selena, and there's a Netflix series on Selena right now, and in the movie about Selena, they didn't show that they put up a fence, but in the Netflix series, which I believe is directed and produced by her sister, Suzette, and I think the family had a little bit more to do with the series than the movie. I could be wrong on that, but anyway, in that, they put a fence around her house because people were just coming over all the time. They had to put a boundary because she was a public figure, and people were taking advantage of that, because sometimes people don't realize that you need your own life, that you need your own space. And so they put a fence around her house to keep fans out and to keep strangers out. Sometimes you need to put a fence in your life. Sometimes you need to get strangers out of your life. You need to put a boundary that protects you, that protects your family, that protects your kids in your life. Like, do you lock your doors at night? Why? Because you want to protect the people inside the house. Sometimes you need to lock your heart, and you need to not let people get to it. The Bible says to guard your heart, for it's the wellspring of life, for your life flows out of your heart. And if you just leave your heart open, right, you're in battle and you don't have a shield on and you don't have any armor, them arrows can go straight to your heart and kill you. It takes one arrow and boom, you're done, you're dead. Think about that. Guard your heart, because your life flows from it. I'm not saying to be cold towards people. I'm not saying to be mean, but I am saying to protect yourself, to protect your heart, to protect your emotions, to protect your mind, to protect your mental health, and to put some boundaries in place, some healthy boundaries. Again, I highly encourage you to get one, both, all of the boundary books by Henry Cloud or Henry Townsend. It's Henry something, but I do believe that they will help you, and you could probably get them on Amazon. I'm not making a commission on it. You can buy them wherever you want. If you're in the Southwest Florida area, you can get them at Christ Center. You can probably get them at Barnes & Noble. If you're in the Tampa, Orlando area, they have a store, what is it called? It's a Christian bookstore that always has them, because when I do Bible studies, that's where I buy them. I forget the name of it, but there's stores wherever you are in your area. So I love you. More importantly, God loves you. He wants you to have healthy boundaries in place. He wants you to have a healthy life. He doesn't want people to take advantage of you. He doesn't want people to be able to abuse you or to harm you in any way, shape, or form. Maybe you need to read that book and put some boundaries in place to protect you, yourself, your family, whatever. Highly encourage you. Boundaries are important. Boundaries are important. You are not anybody else's God. You cannot do everything all by yourself. You can't. You need to put some boundaries to protect yourself. I love you. God loves you. You are seen, you are celebrated, and you are loved. And you need to be protected. So put some boundaries in place. Let God protect you. Catch him next one.